Hi class, welcome to lesson 9.5, which is all about solving quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula, and you should be able to use the discriminant to determine the number of solutions to a quadratic equation. Okay, so the quadratic formula is going to be your best friend. I know that might seem silly and sarcastic, but all of those things that you've really disliked doing in the last couple of sections because they take a lot of steps and there's a lot of room for errors, or you just really hate graphing, this replaces all of that. So write this down at somewhere that you will see it. Write it down 3 or 4 times. It is going to be your best friend. So the quadratic formula, I'm going to show you a song in class to help you remember it, but it is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Like I said, we're going to set that to a song because, we like music and it helps us remember things. But until class, when we do our little sing-along, write it down, try to memorize it. And let's start by using the quadratic formula to solve this equation. So as we said, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So all we have to do is take our information from the equation and plug it in. Before we can use it though, we always need our equations to be written in standard form. So we have 2x squared plus 9x equals 18. So we're almost there, but not quite. We have to move that 18 over so that way it's equal to 0. The quadratic formula only gets used when something is equal to 0. So we're going to say 2x squared plus 9x minus 18 equals 0. Now I can use the quadratic formula, my best friend. Okay, so my a value is 2, my b value is 9, and my c value is negative 18. So I just have to plug that in to the appropriate spots. So I have x equals a negative b, so negative 9, plus or minus the square root of 9 squared minus 4ac. Notice that's all being multiplied together. So 4 times 2 times negative 18 all over 2 times a. Okay, so if I write that out and start simplifying some things, I'm going to have x equals negative 9 plus or minus the square root of, we have 81 minus 4 times 2 times negative 18. If I simplify everything under there, I get 225, and then 2 times 2 gives me 4. So I really have x equals, switch colors, I have x equals negative 9 plus or minus, the square root of 225 is 15 all over 4. So remember that plus or minus means you're going to do it twice. So once you're going to say x equals negative 9 plus 15 divided by 4. And another time you're going to say x equals negative 9 minus 15 over 4. So negative 9 plus 15 gives me 6. 6 divided by 4 is 1.5. And then negative 9 minus 15, that's negative 24. Negative 24 divided by 4 gives me a negative 6. So my two answers are 1.5 and negative 6. Go ahead and try to solve this one on your own using the quadratic formula. Hopefully you ended up with negative 6.5. If you have any questions about that, please be sure to ask for some help. All right, example 2. Let's again solve using the quadratic formula. So we have 4x squared minus 24x plus 35. Okay, so again, x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. My a value is 4, my b value is negative 24, my c value is 35. So if I plug that in, I have 24 plus or minus the square root of negative 24 squared minus 4 times 4 times 35 all over 2 times 4. And if I keep simplifying, this becomes x equals 24 plus or minus. If I simplify everything inside there, you should get 16 all over 8. If you're not getting the same answers as me for the inside the square root, talk to me because you might be plugging it into the calculator incorrectly. You have to be very careful when you use those parentheses, okay? Parentheses are going to be super important for the quadratic formula. All right, so now I have x equals 24 plus or minus, the square root of 16 is just 4, divided by 8. So I have 24 plus 4 is 28. 28 divided by 8 gives me, 28 divided by 8 is 3.5. And if I do 24 minus 4, I get 20 divided by 8 equals 2.5. Okay. Go ahead and try solving, and you need to round to the nearest tenth if necessary. Hopefully you got 0.4 and 1.6. If you have any questions, please be sure to ask either myself or a friend for some help. All right, our third example, we're still just practicing using the quadratic formula. So we have 2x squared minus 17x plus 8 equals 0. So my a term is 2. My b term is negative 17. My c term is 8. Again, my quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now if I plug my information in, I have x equals negative 17, so that becomes positive 17, plus or minus the square root of negative 17 squared minus 4 times 2 times 8 all over 2 times 2. And if I simplify that, I have an x equals 17 plus or minus the square root of, that's 289 minus 4 times 2 times 8 all over 4, or x equals 17 plus or minus the square root of 225 over 4. And if I do that, I have x equals square root of 225 is 15. So I get x equals either 8, because 17 plus 15 gives me 32. 32 divided by 4 is 8. Or 17 minus 15 gives me 2. 2 divided by 4 is 1/2. Or 0.5. Okay, so I did 17 plus 15 divided by 4. That's how I got my 8. 17 minus 15 divided by 4. That's how I got my 1/2. Go ahead and solve this one on your own. Hopefully you ended up with negative 2/3 and positive 1/2. If you have questions, be sure to reach out for some help. All right, so let's quickly talk about all of the different methods we've used to solve quadratic equations. We've solved by factoring, okay? That's when we either pull out GCF or we have, x plus 3x minus 5, okay? It's when we write things with our parentheses. Graphing, you guys are familiar with graphing, using square roots, completing the square, and quadratic formula. So this, I would take a screenshot of, and it tells you the best method to use for each one. So factoring, use only when the constant term is 0, or if the factors are easily determined. Okay, graphing, use when an approximate solution is sufficient. Graphing is going to be the one you use the least, okay? Using square roots, use when an equation can be written in the form of x squared equals n. can only be used if there's no x term, okay? So if you have an x squared but there's no just plain x. Completing the square can be used for any equation that's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, but it's simplest to apply when b is even and a is equal to 1. Quadratic formula can be used on any equation that is of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. It is your foolproof method. Okay, so we're going to talk about the discriminant now. Okay, so the discriminant is used to tell you how many solutions you should get. All of the quadratic formulas that we just did, we got 2 answers for each of them. But if we, and those 2 answers tell us where it crosses the x-intercept. But if you look at our first graph, you see there is 0 x-intercept, so there's 0 real solutions. It never touches our x-axis. The next, or the middle column, it touches once, so there's 1 real solution, and the last one, it touches the x-axis twice, so there's 2 real solutions, okay? The discriminant, people tend to overthink it and make it more work than it is. It is just the part of the quadratic formula that's underneath the square root, okay? So to find out how many solutions there are, you literally just do b squared minus 4ac. And if you get a negative answer, if b squared minus 4ac is negative, you end up with 0 intercepts. If b squared minus 4ac ends up equaling 0, that means it touches the x-axis once. If you end up with a positive number after doing b squared minus 4ac, that means you have 2 x-intercepts. So let's try it out. Our discriminant, remember, is the under the square root part of it's the inside of the radical on our quadratic formula. Remember, radical is another fancy word for something with a root, okay? So we need our a term is 2, our b term is 11, our c term is 15. So if we're trying to find the value of the discriminant and the number of real solutions, I'm going to take that 11, I'm going to square it. I'm going to say minus 4 times a times c. So 11 squared gives me 121 minus, and then 4 times 2, or actually I'm going to do 2 times 15 is 30. 30 times 4 is 120. So I end up with 1, which is positive. So if I had a positive number, that meant I had 2 real solutions. So I say my discriminant is 1, and I have 2 real solutions. The word real is important here because in Algebra 2 and beyond Algebra 2, you're going to learn a lot more about things that are called imaginary numbers. So while that word real seems trivial right now, like you don't need to use it, it's good practice for you to start using it so that way when you get to Algebra 2, it's already a habit and you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so then A, in this instance, equals 9, B equals negative 30, C equals 25. So B squared is negative 30 squared minus 4 times A times C. So negative 30 squared is a positive 900 minus, and then 4 times 25 is 100. 100 times 9 is 900. So 900 minus 900 is 0. So my discriminant is 0. And when your discriminant is 0, that means there is 1 solution. So 1 real solution. And that's all it is asking you to do. You don't have to do the entire quadratic formula. You just have to do that inner radical part. And remember, that's called the discriminant. Go ahead and solve this last one on your own. Good luck. Hopefully you ended up with negative 4, and since that was a negative number, you determined that meant it had no real solution. If you have questions about this or anything else, please be sure to ask for some help. Like I said, we're going to learn a song that's going to help you memorize the quadratic formula. But yeah, have a good day.